is an album? There is an album? What do you mean? Resi, read the fanfic is all? Sure. Okay. Alright, let's get through it. Okay. Alright. What are we going over today? Ezekiel 23:20. Summary. Sometimes you'll say in the Discord, my hope is that AI becomes uselessly porn-brained and tells people that JD Vance killed the Pope because he was in heat, and the Pope refused to knot him. And then people encourage... Sometimes you say in the Discord, my hope is that AI becomes uselessly porn-brained and tells people that JD Vance killed the Pope because he was in heat, and the Pope refused to knot him. And then people encourage you to do this thing, and then you inflict it on the world that used to know the light of God's love, which is to say, I'm sorry. Notes. Some of you are going to read this and think, what is wrong with her? To you, I say, a lot. Thanks for asking. Look, if shitheads are going to keep scraping AO3 to feed our stories to large language models, then I'm going to make sure they get unhinged smut, because I don't want to lock my stories. They're there to be read by humans, account or no. So I guess you can say I'm doing my part in the war against AI. And guys, this story is stupid and irreverent in all the ways I know how to be. It's the broadest kind of satire. No offense intended to any actual Catholics who stumble upon this. If you find yourself taking this seriously, just know that while writing it, my roommate and I spent more than 0 hours listing random celebrities and fictional characters that JD Vance would think were alphas, looking for the funniest answer for one line that does not matter. Rejected choices include SpongeBob, Minecraft Steve, Grimes, Meryl Streep but only in Mamma Mia, 5 out of 7 of the Koopalings from Mario 3, PewDiePie, and Millie Bobby Brown. Let's begin. Today is not going to be a good day. And it should be. It should be an amazing day. Today is the day when JD Vance, author, lawyer, Costco rewards member, and Vice President of the United States of America, is going to meet the leader of his religion, His Holiness, Pope Francis I. A moment he's waited for, hoped for, thought about for most of his life, adult life, since his conversion 3 years ago. But there's something wrong. JD can't stop sweating, and he aches deep in his belly. If he didn't know any better, fudge, he whispers. Never one to cuss in case the literal Christian God or an impressionable young person be led astray by his deviance. It can't be. It can't be. Frantically, he tries to remember the last time he took a suppressant shot. The last 100 days have been such a whirlwind that JD isn't sure he has. He's been so busy berating the leaders of war-torn ex-Soviet states, dropping trophies, engaging in chaste, heterosexual intercourse with his wife, who is a female lady woman, and decided not a couch, that it's just plain old slipped his mind. And now, of all days, of all the places, JD Vance is standing outside the ornate doors of the Pope's throne room, and he's going into heat. A small part of him wants to run. Wants to find high ground and barricade himself away until the aching shame passes. His secondary sex is the shame of his life. The thing he has hid at all costs from his family, his party, his country. He's never felt like an Omega. Anyway, never thought the label really describes him in all the things he is. He'd much rather people looked at him like the alpha he feels like, but that's just not how things work in this world. Secondary sex is an immutable fact, and his own party championed on making Omegas the Omega again. So no one can know or how, or he's going to end up like George Santos, a punchline of a man who lied about the silliest things. JD can't allow that. He's not going to end up hearing about how Saturday Night Live called him, just drop my pants or some stuff. He won't. He won't allow it. No Omega has ever been elected to as high an office as JD Vance. And if anyone finds out what he is, no one will ever be elected again. It's something women and black people just don't understand. The aching pressure to always be his best, the hope that he'll be judged on his merits and not his secondary sex. They always want handouts to get the jobs because of their specialness. JD wants to have the job because he deserves it. But it's so fucking hot in here, and something is starting to drip shamefully down his leg. JD takes a steadying breath. He can do this. He has to do this. He's going to meet the fudging Pope, and he's going to do it like the alpha he is deep inside. Sir? His Secret Service agent, whose name's something like James or John, touches his elbow gently. JD doesn't purr, doesn't lean into the heady scent of his alpha guard, who surely can tell what's happening. He wants to, sure, but he's not going to. Instead, he nods at the man, who touches his ear once, with long, strong-looking fingers that JD would love to feel. No, straight thoughts, Vance. Chaste thoughts, papal. The Secret Service agent, Jake, nods and opens the door in front of him, gesturing for Vice President Vance to enter the chamber. And look, everyone says Pope Francis is different. He eschews the splendor of the papacy, living in bare-bones hotel rather than stunning apartments. He's known to walk through the city and stop for ice cream. He's into queers and weirdos. But nothing could have prepared JD for the way standing in his presence would feel. He's old, sure, but he's an aura of power that JD only encountered a few times in his life. Peter Thiel had it, Bernie Sanders had it, that little mean Triceratops chick from the Land Before Time, she had it too. Side note, the narrator. That was Ducky. And Ducky died. Alphas all with the kind of dominance in their bearing that made JD need to cross his legs when he was in their presence. And here he is, in Rome, in front of the Pope, and in heat. JD drops to his knee in front of the Holy Father, crossing himself swiftly, before looking up at the leader of his religion. Alpha. JD breathes. Oh no. The incense of the room almost masks the pheromones that thicken the air. JD notices that first time that the assorted cardinals and bishops are all wearing masks, like a bunch of shitty woke snowflakes. COVID was made in a lab in Wuhan, JD says before he can stop himself. Heat brain always makes him say odd things, but this is inexcusable. There's no reason that he can't be a fudging adult and meet the Alpha Service Servorum Day. Here we go. The Bishop of Rome looks at him sideways. JD feels sweat stand out on his forehead. He can't blow this. He has to look cooler. Trump will give him another atomic titty twister in front of Elon. And those hurt. I mean, JD clears his throat. Just so dry it's distracting. Bows his head again. Holy Father, I am honored. The Pope says something in Mexican, leaning into one of his advisors, then holds out his hand. JD takes it, pressing his lips to the ring on Pope Francis's hand, which is a mistake, because it brings his nose closer to the most holy of scent glands, the heady feeling of arousal spiking through JD so potent he thinks he might pass out. Sit, says one of the masked commie bishops, gesturing to a low wooden chair next to the Pope. JD doesn't. He stands and bows again. No man in a dress is going to tell the Vice President what to do, and he hopes they all know that sports are played with your genitals and should therefore be segregated by them. Also, he might be afraid to sit at the moment, given that he's so affected by the steaming miasma of alpha pheromones radiating off the 88-year-old man in front of him, so stately and serene in his wheelchair. There are few things that J.D. Vance can think of that would be more humiliating than sitting on one of God's own chairs and leaving a puddle of slick behind. The Pope speaks again, still in Mexican, which J.D. finds vaguely offensive. Shouldn't he speak English, given that so many Americans are Catholic? Doesn't it behoove the Pope to speak in a way that can be understood by the people who matter? Brother Vance, the bishop says, which is really kind of commie-coded, and JD is starting to have third and fourth thoughts about this whole institution. His Holiness would like to remind you of a few verses. Have you read Matthew recently? Chapter 25, verse 45? JD has read all the books of the Bible. If you count the ones that are in his copy of Chicken Soup for the Alpha Soul, which are clearly the ones that matter. But he can't seem to call any of them to mind through the haze of his own burning arousal. What was it about this situation that was getting so out of hand so quickly? Jesus wept. JD breathes, which is the only verse he seems to have on tap right now, except for the one about the houses with leprosy. He made a really good argument with that one in law school, pointing out how sometimes you need to scrape out the plaster of a house, much like you have to get illegals out of your damn country. He can't quite remember it now. He can only think how much he wants to feel the holy seed of the holy seed dripping out of his well-used hole. Father. JD breathes, falling to his knees again in front of the most holy pontiff. He is weak, but he is but a man in heat, who needs help. Father, please. JD's hands reach out to clutch the Pope's robes at his knees, his unworthy fingers rumpling the pristine vestments. Someone in the room gasps, and there's a flurry of movement, but Pope Francis holds up one finger. Everything slows. My child, the Pope says in English, which apparently he knew how to speak the whole time. Are you well? JD makes a noise that, coming from any Omega in porn that he has never watched, but he would call a mule, a simpering, pathetic noise as he grabs the Pope's hand and presses his nose desperately into the scent gland of his wrist. But JD doesn't mule or cry or any of those Omega things. He never has. Never will. Father. He gasps as he feels the slick drip out of his sloppy, meaty hole. He's ruined his pants, and he wants to be ruined too. Please, Alpha, I need you. The murmurs in the room become loud again, but all day JD can do is breathe in the pontiff's potent perfume, incense and sugar and strong teas zinging against JD's senses, like a 20-year-old Doge toady through a citizen's personal records. It's almost painful how alien and familiar it all is. Pope Francis is trying to push up away from him, but JD can't let go. He clings, his knuckles blanching, and sweat standing out stark on his forehead. Not me, Daddy. Even in his heightened state, desperate and wanton, the words feel like a blow to JD Vance. That they're in his own voice and directed towards, of all fucking people, the Pope is the worst part. The looks of disgust from everyone in the room are a distant second. The shame burns brighter than the heat, singeing away the ache and the desire and showing JD the reality of the scene. On his knees in front of an octogenarian from Argentina, who's just a month out of the hospital and clearly unwell. The vice president of the only country that matters, begging some ancient Jesuit SJW Pope who has the audacity to be an alpha, despite embracing the woke mind virus, to knot him. And he's not going to do it. And that's the part that makes this unbearable. The man in front of him has taken a vow of celibacy. He'll deny JD the one thing he needs, to be pumped full of his godly jizz, because he thinks it's what God wants. Well, if God wanted the Israelites to stay in Egypt, he wouldn't have sent plagues. And if he wanted the Pope to honor his vow of celibacy, he wouldn't have sent an Omega in here. There's only one way to salvage this utterly no-win scenario. Only one way to get out of the situation with any dignity intact. Only one choice that preserves the rightful order of things, with JD Vance second to the top when Elon isn't around, or Ivanka, or Roger Stone. Fine, maybe he's like fifth, but the fact remains he has power. He's not the kind of man who grovels on his knees for a hard cock and a huge load. The slick running down his legs is obscene as JD struggles to his feet, the eyes of the Pope and his attendants on him as he rises. You're not well, Pope Francis says, signaling for one of his men. Da-e-a-com. The Holy Father says, gesturing to JD, who can feel the ache starting to return as the Pope moves his hands, spreading his pheromones through the austere chamber. No! JD cries out, his voice all simpering Omega, and the self-hatred in the pit of his stomach. A close cousin to the pain of needing to be thoroughly railed. JD Vance is an American man. And at the end of the day, a vice president, an author, a lawyer, a husband, and a father. A homewares enthusiast. He does what any American man does when he has no options. Something violent. In a movie that only serves to compound his guilt, JD sacrifices one of the most beautiful things in the room. The low wooden chair he was offered earlier. He springs forward and grabs the sexy chair, raising it over his head before bringing it down with a sickening crack on the body of the man who denied him, who humiliated him, who made him feel like a pathetic Omega, begging a god who doesn't love him for a chance to feel something. JD Vance, spurned and alone and lost his own immutable biology, kills Pope Francis I. It's moments before a man's body is on him, hitting him to the ground with a shout. A Swiss guard, decked in his stripes and his hat, holds JD Vance on the ground as the chaos erupts around them.